Right, greetings, hello, it's Dr. Thomas Daffern here for my weekly talk. We're recording this on the winter solstice, December 21st, as a special celebration, and I have a guest visiting the Peace Museum here in France, Dominic Amschutz, who has come all the way from Switzerland to join me. And so we thought we'd have a little kind of discussion interview thing instead of my usual monologue. It'd be a bit more fun. And Dominic is studying sociology at university in Bern and came all the way from Switzerland yesterday. So that's why we're recording this on the 21st, which is quite a good time to be recording. It's the actual solstice. Okay, so over to you. Do introduce yourself. Tell friends a bit more about what you're doing and why you've come.
Yeah. Hello to all. I am Dominic. I'm actually I'm Swiss, or I don't know if I'm Swiss, but I grew up in Switzerland, in the countryside of Bern, and now I'm living in the city, Bern. I'm studying. Actually, I'm finishing my bachelor degrees in social politics and psychology, and I will after this stay here. I will start my master degrees in sociology, and why I came here, there are several reasons. One reason is that at the moment you can't really do a lot about the COVID, and I thought about going somewhere else and learning some French also, and I saw the Institute of Peace on the platform of Workaway, and when I read what it's about, I just thought that's the place where I should go.
Good.
So I'm come here to study, to learning, reading book, and
Excellent. Okay. Well, look, Dominic, you fire away. You've got a set of questions for me. And I'm happy to try and answer them the best I can. Mm-hmm. And we'll see how it goes. It's not a sort of there's no test here. You know? Mm-hmm. Okay, go for it. You start with the first one.
Yeah. The first one is a general question. Is it why you decided to open this Institute of Peace? What was your motivation, and what was the goal behind all this?
Well, it was founded in 1991, right, which is 30 years next year. We must have a 30-year anniversary of it, right? 91 was the year that the first Gulf War broke out. I was working at the University of London. I had an office in Bloomsbury. I was working with a committee of experts, scientists, social scientists, sociologists, philosophers, and religious experts. Mm-hmm. We were trying to create an Institute of Peace Studies in the University of London. We wanted a centre there. It followed a motion in the convocation of the University of London to create such a thing. I was working with a team of elder academic savants and younger ones. I was one of the youngest on the team. Mm-hmm. My mother had told me about this project. She was on the team, and she was a lifelong peace campaigner. And they wanted a centre that would study peace, because we have centres that study everything else, but peace is surely one of the most important values in life. Mm-hmm. Without peace, we won't survive as a planet. Mm-hmm. And my mother was very active as an anti-nuclear campaigner. I suppose the theory was that if we just put forward the rational case for the ending of war, the disarmament of nuclear weapons, biological and chemical and so on, people will be intelligent enough to see this is logical. We should follow the peace path. Mm-hmm. And so there was a whole field called peace studies that are developed in the 1940s, 50s, 60s of academics in Britain, Europe, America. And I, as part of my job, I had gone around interviewing the experts. I interviewed all the sort of famous scholars, went around the States, went around Europe, came to France. I knocked on the doors of dozens and dozens of top academics, and I said, hello, I'm an young researcher, what is peace? Can you tell me? And I interviewed them with my little dictaphone, you know.
Right.
And I've got all the archives and stuff here of that. And then we thought, well, let's do it. Let's set it up, you know. And so we used to have a termly seminar, conference. We got visiting lecturers in. I've recorded all those. They're still here. We ran courses at the Institute of Education. And then I taught at Birkbeck College, running courses on peace studies. What we didn't get, and you know that's complicated, you'd have to look in, you know, do some political research into this. We never got official government backing at a senior level to set this thing up, which would be a national project. I ran meetings in the House of Lords in the UK Parliament to get support, but it wasn't forthcoming. And even when Labour got elected, I thought we might get more support. But instead, the Labour Party under Tony Blair took Britain in a war direction. And he launched the Gulf War #2. 9/11 happened, and peace was the last thing anyone was talking about. Now it was war, and endless war on the Muslims, you know. And I, by then, was teaching at the Muslim college. I knew Muslim students as personal friends and colleagues. And I realised this war against Islam was totally unnecessary. You know, it's like one of those nightmares where you can see the train crash coming and you can't move, you can't wake. I felt like that. And it seems to me that Britain's foreign policy, ever since then, those beautiful days back in the 1990s when we thought peace was possible, they've gone from nightmare to nightmare. And now my country has been taken over by a bunch of hard right-wing militarists who use propaganda to tell everyone everything's fine. And they're doing Brexit, which to me is an anti-peace. It's like a stab in the back of everything I believe in: liberal, democratic, socialist, left-wing, moderate, intelligent project of internationalism. So I'm a bit of a refugee, I suppose, for common sense and reason. And I belong to the Republic of Letters. And that's what the Institute stands for. We stand for a rational peace policy for the UK and for Europe and for the world. And I still, before I die, I would like my institute to have its house in Bloomsbury and to be running courses and degrees, you know, as part of the university programme there. So there we are in a nutshell.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, so the Institute is not only about peace, it's also about religions. And that's my second question. If we look back in history, a lot of wars were about religion, were between different religions, like the Christians against the Muslims.
Yeah.
There were also in Europe like big wars in one religion, like the Protestant against the Catholics. So you naively thinking you could come to the solution that you just have to end religion to end wars. What is the answer from you to this kind of idea?
Yeah. It's a very good question, and I've been asked that question by many students over the years. When I was teaching in secondary schools in England, often that would be the first question, you know. Surely religions cause all the wars, why do I have to study them? Let's just get rid of religions. So can I ask you to pass me the chart, the table of religions? So I want to give you a scientific answer. So what I did over the years, I designed and researched the periodic table of religions and philosophies. I agree 100%, religions are very dangerous. Much blood has been spilled between you might be the wrong kind of Christian, I might be the wrong kind of Muslim or whatever, you know, we'll kill each other. I mean, Ninian Smart, who was an influence on me, professor of religious studies at Lancaster University, who I met, he defined religion as the thing you're prepared to die for. It's a good answer, you know. It's about ultimate beliefs and the meaning of life type questions. It's the field that asks the bigger picture questions. And if we radically differ on it, obviously, you know, I mean, it's a dreadful thought that we'd be prepared to kill each other over it. But people are, you know, as well as political issues. And religion and politics they're interwoven. And it's hard to separate them, as you know from your studies in political science, right? One hypothesis would be to abolish all religions and go for atheism, or agnosticism at least. Now that's been tried. The Greeks tried that. Greek philosophers, Epicurus said that. Democritus said that. There is a tradition of intelligent atheism that has said that religion is the cause of all trouble. In a sense, Socrates sort of. I don't think Socrates was saying let's abolish religion. He was saying let's abolish superstition and let's ask intelligent questions about religions, right? I'm a Socratic philosopher in that I believe in the right to ask questions. I have a problem. I think the problem is human nature. You see, you can be deeply religious but really kind, loving and intelligent and enlightened. You can also be deeply anti-religious and really horrible, nasty and violent. So the Marxist tradition, just to take one example of applied atheism, did unspeakable acts of cruelty to just little Buddhists in Tibet. When the Maoist, Marxist, communist troops waving their red flag attacked Tibet, they massacred and tortured to death and actually practiced political cannibalism on Tibetans. I mean, I've been reading a history of Tibet, and they deliberately would go into a village and eat the head man in like a banquet, just to frighten everyone. Now that's in the name of atheism. And in Russia they killed many Christians and etc., etc. So I don't agree with that extremist atheism. I think extreme atheism is as dangerous as religious fanaticism. So what I'm saying as a philosopher of comparative religion and intellectual history is we need to get a peace treaty between the religions. This is the list, the table of them all. I mean, I'm a follower of Descartes, who said all true philosophy begins with doubt. Where we are here in France is not far from where Descartes lived, or was born. And true philosophy begins with wonder and with doubt. And today is St. Thomas's Day, who was the Descartes of Christian apostles. He was the one who doubted, doubting Thomas. I'm in that tradition. And I'm saying let's doubt all the religions, but let's be free to have the conversation. You can be in any box. You can be a Hindu, a Jain, a Buddhist, a Sikh, a Christian, a Catholic, a Coptic, an Nestorian, a Taoist, or a Marxist, or a humanist, or a Sartrean, or an existentialist, or a Platonist, or whatever. Let's just have a civilized conversation about this. And let's develop a methodology whereby we can find truth. I do believe that as the Theosophists say, there's no religion higher than truth, and that the religions do culminate in truth. And our duty as intellectuals and students is to find that truth, which I think is always changing, it's ever elusive. Like Heraclitus said, you can't step into the same river twice. So we can't go back to being Platonists or Aristotelians or Marxists. Truth is always moving on. And what you will discover 50 years from now, you'll look back on this interview, you know, I'll be dead and gone. Your truth will be different, but hopefully better than. Okay? That's my answer.
Thank you. I will have some question about Marxism, but first we're staying with God. As I know from our discussion before, I know that you're believing in a God or maybe several gods, I don't know. How do you know that God is for peace? If you look in the Old Testament of the Bible, you see also a God who is kind of a God of the war, at least in some parts of the Old Testament. Why do you think he's for peace?
It's a very good question, and it's something I've puzzled about sometimes. You know, I wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat thinking, oh my God, what if God's really evil and wants war? What if he's going to blow this planet up with nuclear war? You know, No, it's a really good question. On the business of do I believe in one God or many gods, I mean, that's why I'm writing my book on religious mathematics. I argue that each of these different great religious traditions, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, etc., they have a different number. They're like different arithmetical attempts to define God. Buddhists define God as zero. God is the absolute nothingness. Muslims define God as the absolute one, the unity. So do Jews. Christians define God as the Trinity, the three, the complexity of the relationships of the three. Yes, there's a one, but there's also a many, and three is the interconnectedness. Zoroastrians, the Persian religion, which interests me a lot, they believe in a duality. They believe there is an evil God and a good God. But our duty as human beings is to be on the side of the good God. We're supposed to be frontline warriors in the struggle for the victory of the good God against the bad God. And that's what history's about. And then all the other religions, they sort of have variants of that. Well, I say that they're all part of the truth. They're all part of the mathematics of religion. I don't know whether God is 1, 2, 3 or 33 million. Because the Hindus, the yellow ones, say that there's 33 million gods. You know, and they know most of the names. I mean, I think this is a really interesting field, this numerology of the gods. And I've written about it in my latest book on religious mathematics. But what I say is that, okay, some of the deity traditions that our planet has, the gods are quite malevolent. The Zoroastrians come out plain and say there's a devil, Ahriman, he's evil, and he's very powerful. He runs half the world, you know. The Jews seem to believe that, yes, there's God, good God, Yahweh, but he runs the pagan nation, the bad God, the devil, Satan, is running most of the other nations. They have this view only Israel is, you know, the saved and chosen people, and the devil's running everyone else, kind of thing, which has made them quite introverted historically and looking for themselves because they're afraid of the other pagan nations. Christians inherited that view. They were the new chosen people of Israel, but everyone else was the devil, so they went around bashing pagans. You know, and then in actual paganism, you don't really get a devil. So in ancient Greek thought, or Roman, or Celtic Druid thought, there isn't this dualism. There isn't a good and evil God. There's just a sort of pantheon of possible archetypes, as Jung would say, some of which are a bit naughty sometimes. So Loki in the Norse religion, he's a bit naughty. But he's not like really evil. He just likes to cause trouble. He's like the kid in the back of the class that lets off a stink bomb. You know, it's not like the end of the world, right? So I take the view, I mean, I suppose, because I'm a Platonist, philosophically, I think he's one of the greatest masters, you know. He said evil is only negation of being. In my huge epic philosophical work called Being and Knowledge, I basically come round to that, you know, ignorance is the negation of knowledge. Lies are the negation of truth, and evil is the negation of goodness. But ultimately they fail because being is the sun, let's say the logos, that shines in everyone, as St. John said, and it comes back, it cannot be defeated. So that truth is eternal. Evil is just like a temporary sideshow that you know, will lose. It's taking a while on this planet, yeah, I admit. You know, the kingdom of God on earth as in heaven, it's taken a while, right? Christ uttered that prayer 2,000 years ago and it's still not fully happened. Why? Well, some Gnostics, extreme Gnostics, said it's because the devil really is powerful. He is in charge of this world. And the good people, we're not powerful enough, you know. I don't really take that view. And if it's true, then I'm opposing that devil figure. I'm taking him on, right? You know, my ancestors were warriors. I showed you earlier a picture of. And you know, if the devil's running this planet, then he better watch it and get off the planet, as far as I'm concerned. Because I want the little people, the good people, the people of love, to come together and reclaim the planet. That's why the Democrats finally won their election in America. That's why finally Brexit will be stopped. That's why Hitler lost the war, because enough good people came together and stopped him. You know, I do believe in the innate goodness in human beings, and we will defeat evil, even if it takes, you know, a while.
Thank you.
Okay.
So let's move on to Marxism.
Right.
I have to because I'm studying sociology, and even though sociology wasn't a scientific discipline when Marx lived, in the modern understanding of sociology, he would be a sociologist. So one of the famous quotes from him, I don't know if I translated right to English, but like religion is opium for the people. And I thought a lot about this quote, and I think he has a point there. At least how I experienced some religious Christian people is that sometimes when there is a lot of injustice, inequality in this world, and sometimes religious people tend to laying back and say, God will handle it. Maybe that's the will of the willing of God. So I don't have to do nothing because it's the thing of God. So what are you thinking about this quote and about religion making the people passive? I don't say that it has to be like that, but I have experienced some kind of thoughts. What are you thinking about?
Okay. It's a good quote, and I mean, Marx was very ferociously atheistic, which is strange given that he was from a Jewish background of many, many generations, and he had rabbis in his blood, you know. I don't think that Marx, I mean, it's one of my unfinished questions of research. How learned was Marx in religious studies? You see, religious studies didn't really exist in his day. I mean, growing up, you know, in 1830s, 1840s, the whole idea of comparative religion, this sort of thing, didn't exist in Marx's awareness field. He went to the University of Berlin, and it was just beginning, right? I mean, Hegel obviously had taught there, but he never met Hegel. He was dead before he got there. Hegel tried to get going a sort of comparative study of all world religions and things. In order to answer the question scientifically, is religion the opium of the people or not? That's a scientific proposition. And what does it mean? You know, I mean, opium actually is an amazing drug that can cure people if they've got to have their leg removed. I mean, it's from a poppy. And in ancient Greece and Rome, it was the only thing they had for surgery. So opium is actually really necessary in the right dosage, in the right hands as a medicine. So one should, you know, maybe it's the same with religion. I think religion is like a medicine. In the right hands of a proper doctor, a skilled practitioner, it can save souls and lives and cure depression and cure suicide and whatever, and cure war, right? In the wrong hands, drug dealers selling heroin on the streets of LA, it enslaves a whole generation to madness, you know. So I think it's how you apply it. The second point you made about like just lying back and leaving it to God, just sort of laid back, well, I don't need to do anything because God's doing it. I have met a few people like that, but I've heard it in a slightly different format. I have had some Jehovah's Witnesses come round here to France. Until the COVID thing, they were coming around like at least once a month. And we got into some very long discussions. It's interesting. And actually they're a fascinating couple because the wife is a descendant of Voltaire, who lived in Geneva and was a great Freemason and universal deist and all that. Swiss, French. And she's a direct descendant of Voltaire, and she's now a Jehovah's Witness, trying to convert me to Jehovah's Witness type of beliefs. And I'm saying I love her to bits, and and I'm explaining the periodic table, and I'm a Christian and a Druid and a Buddhist and a Sufi, and so we were having discussions, and then it comes down to nitty gritty. I explain, look, I'm a peace activist. I'm trying to get peace between all Muslims. And what she tells me is, you can't do that, Thomas, because God won't let you do that. God doesn't want peace. Going back to your earlier point. Because it says here in the Bible, and she reads Revelation, it said the world's going to be destroyed. It's all going to fall to pieces, and the angel of death is coming, and millions are going to die. And God wants that destruction. And I say, well, I'm sorry. I put on my Voltaire hat. I say, if that's the case, I'm against that God. I'm with Voltaire and rationalists and the Enlightenment. I'm against that's a tyrant trying to destroy my world, right? And we have to grow up out of that. And then she gets very angry and says, no, well, you're a heretic because I believe in God and you obviously don't, And I say, well, no, I believe in peace, the God of nature, the God of reason. I believe in all the gods, all 33 million, and I believe in human beings. I'm a humanist, which is the orange box. And I want to save the planet from religious fanatics. I'm very polite and diplomatic, right? And so that's an ongoing discussion. So it's not only that I should lie back and do nothing because God's going to do everything, but just watch the show because God's going to destroy the world and do the Last Judgment, right? And we're supposed to sit back and do nothing because it says it in the Bible or the Quran or whatever. Well, you see, I'm an activist for the good. And I believe as a philosopher, I run Philosophers for Peace in Europe and involved with network all over the world. I think we humans have a duty to stand up against false gods like that. The reason I've studied them so much is to track down the origins of the absurd thoughts that can send somebody round to my place and tell me God doesn't want peace and I should stop my work because God wants to destroy the planet. Now, to me, that's like QAnon type thinking. It's like Trump is going to launch a nuclear war and, he's going to attack Iran and everything's going to be an apocalypse. And that's good, The thinking of those kind of people, I think, is in error. And my duty as an intellectual, a philosopher, is just to, hold up the white flag of peace and say, we can talk about this, guys. Stop firing. And so, and I'll finish with my quote from Fichte. You see, I'm an intellectual and a theorist working on meta theory. Ken Wilber, Mark IV, for a sort of integral view of reality and all that. But I'm also an activist, and I don't think it's good enough just to say I've got a theory now. I'll lie back and do nothing. We also have to be active. And also the theory needs constantly re-updating. This is where I disagree with the old style, theorists of Marxism or whatever. They had their theory and now they try and make reality fit the theory instead of adjusting the theory to fit reality. So thinking is also an activity. That was the phrase by Fichte. That is one of my mottos. As a thinker, I'm also active, constantly reforming the theory to fit reality, not the other way around.
You're also a historian, and my next question, I'm really interested in the answer. What do you think would have happened if the Marxism, the communism, would have been installed not in Russia, a really poor country in this time, if it would have been installed in a more economically advanced country like the US or England? Do you think the whole story would have changed? Maybe the current system would be different, wouldn't be capitalism, for example? What do you think would have happened?
Yeah, it's again a very good question, and sort of counterfactual history it's called. We can speculate about that, and I have done. I'm glad you differentiated between Marxism and communism. You said, like, whether either or both. Because most people don't realise, but Marxism as such came from a seedbed of bubbling ideas. People at the end of the 18th century, the Napoleonic Wars, the revolution here in France hadn't delivered enough of the goods, you know. And so a lot of people began to think up a criticism of society and came up with ideas that they called socialist or communist. One of them was the mayor of the local town, Boussac, a man called Pierre Leroux, who was a visionary socialist and a communist. He wrote, he was a printer, and he published local journals, and they, you know, all over Europe they became quite famous. He didn't agree with Karl Marx's theories of communism, however. He felt Marx had left out the spiritual solidarity that has to be the basis of true communism. Marx was a materialist who thought that history would like a sort of engineering project. You know, you build the engine in a certain way, you light the fuse, and it all travels on and does its thing. Leroux believed, he was an idealist in philosophy like me, he was a Platonist. He believed that the human spirit is at the essence of what we do. It's your spirit that brought you here to visit me. It's my spirit that created the Institute. That's why we're having a discussion. It's not billiard balls bashing in the night. You know, there's nothing deterministic about why you ended up here or why I'm here. And Leroux said, therefore, you have to galvanise and network the collective imagination of humanity to affect an authentic communist society. We'll never get a true communist society until all our collective imaginations are engaged in the project. As long as some group out there are thinking, well, we hate them, let's blow them up, you know, it's just war, war, war. Right? So the tragedy, I think there are two tragedies here in history. I've studied that esoteric socialist tradition, communist tradition in detail. I wrote a book on the esoteric origins of Marxism way back as an undergraduate, which I discovered all kinds of stuff. A lot of these people were dabbling in esotericism, Freemasonry, occultism. They were good people, like Saint-Simon, Robert Owen, Cheskovsky, who, Moses Hess, who introduced Marx and Engels, was a Freemason, a Jewish savant, and an amazing Hegelian universalist philosopher. Right? So the first tragedy is why that lot didn't win, and why Marxism won the argument. You see, Marx was a brutal arguer. He was a bully, absolutely intellectually. And he brooked no opposition and no alternatives. In any discussion, it was his way or the highway. And he silenced all the alternatives, literally. He wrote scurrilous articles attacking them. He had, because he had access to the press, he could defame people and get away with it and insult them and stuff. So not a very pleasant man, actually. I mean, I will give him the benefit of the doubt and say he thought he was doing it in a good cause. Discuss. But his tactics were pretty rude and brutal. So, that's why the good guys lost, actually, in the discussion about what communism was going to be like. And the critics of Marx said, hang on, this guy's going to install a dictatorship. He wants to get a little bunch of elite Marxists in charge, and then they'll brutalise everyone else. That's dangerous, folks. And all the critical intellectuals of France and the left at the time warned about Marxism coming up. They said, no, we can't, that's ridiculous to do that. That'll be just as bad as the Ancien Regime, but just in reverse. But they